Okay, it's Monday, February 5th. Um, most places in North America are not as cold as they should be. And frankly, I'm not complaining about the lack of snow in Buffalo. Um,
Imagine your heat
we
bill will enjoy
have
it.
a lot of things that we can talk about today. We're going to start with Jeff, who's going to ask some questions of us about what we would like in terms of a 2068 next, whether it would be emulation or physical hardware. Uh, Adam sent out a very nice email a couple days ago that has a long list of things that we can cover. Hopefully, we'll get to all of these things. Oh, and Tim has some photos that he shared that we'll take a look at. But let's start with Jeff. Jeff, I'm going to spotlight you, and you should be able to share your screen.
Okie dokie. So we've been talking about a follow-on to the 2068, and basically, I have a question for the community to see what they think would be the best way to go. There are actually two ways to deal with this, and first of all, I want to give my profoundest apologies for putting up a PowerPoint slide. So please forgive me. So there are two ways to go with this. One would be to do software emulation of a next gen 2068 using a Raspberry Pi or something else, and the other would be to use hardware. And David and I were talking about this today, and basically I put together a list of the various advantages and disadvantages to both. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I'm a hardware guy. So this is going to seem kind of strange. So first, for software emulation, the advantages are essentially relatively low cost. You can basically do everything that I think you need to do on a 2 gig Raspberry Pi 4B for about $45. You'd have to add a keyboard and a power supply, but it's relatively cheap. You can use USB peripherals. You get HDMI video out, which everyone is really basically asking for. It has good audio capabilities, so you can do stereo AY sound or any number of different things. You can emulate a lot of different machines using the same hardware platform. RetroPie can emulate a bunch of computers. They actually have the Sinclair 48K emulated, the ZX81, and then a bunch of other various computers. So that's kind of a bonus. It's easy to update the software. The machine development can be done in C or C++, or I think if you are into major self-abuse, you could probably do it in Python as well. And there's a well-developed ecosystem for doing software emulation using RetroArch and the LibRetro toolset. So it would be fairly straightforward to come up with a next-gen 2068. The disadvantages, I'll go, somebody have a question or comment? The disadvantage for software emulation is that I was looking into it, you can emulate or you can implement an IO bus, but it would be relatively slow, like 5 mega ops per IO ops per second. So, it's still not too bad. What that would allow you to do is to design your own hardware and be able to have a card extender or something like that. And the other disadvantage is that you don't get a true hardware experience out of it. So for a hardware solution, the advantages are, cycle accurate emulation of existing machines. It can be made compatible with legacy peripherals, floppies, etc. and it does provide a true hardware experience. The disadvantages for the hardware solution, at least in terms of the community in general, is the cost is higher and the cost depends on the feature set. The hardware high-level development languages are somewhat arcane and development is more difficult versus a standard programming language. Access to USB peripherals is more difficult, but it's not crazy hard. And there's no common ecosystem for development. I mean, there are fewer pre-written interfaces for games controllers and such. And then if I can just bring something up here. This is a first shot at a hardware implementation for the 2068E that that basically has all of the functions that we've been talking about. So you can see it's from a hardware standpoint, I don't find that particularly troublesome. That's actually a little on the simpler side of some boards that I've done in my professional life, but you can see, it's not a small thing. So basically, those are just some things to think about in terms of where we want to go with the 2068E. We could either do software emulation or we could do a hardware solution. And I really don't have a major dog in this fight, other than to say that, like I said before, I'm a hardware guy. But if it looks like from a cost versus desirability standpoint, software emulation is the way to go, then I think the team would certainly be willing to head off in that direction. So what I will do is throw it back to you, David, and if you want, you can go ahead and handle the discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me remove myself. Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, a couple questions. One, what does software development mean? And two, what is next about this?
This would be a 2068 evolution, if you will, that something that you would expect to see Timex put out, say, in the late 80s, after the 2068 had time to get acceptance and mature. So, for instance, we're talking more memory, faster CPU, probably better graphics, those kinds of things. And so, and a lot of that, the feature set is going to depend on what the community would find particularly attractive in something like this. And again, a lot of this is going to be a trade-off between money and capabilities, money and features.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question, Carl? Or I'm sorry, Ryan?
Well, okay. So I've been thinking about this too, and the conclusion that I seem to keep coming to with the sort of next, if I had those three things, the add-ons for the existing machine. Another thing, which is recreate the machine with new parts so it's not disintegrating.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you get some options like, okay, maybe I could plug in a nice keyboard or whatever, that kind of thing. And then there's this next, which would have, notionally additional capabilities of some sort. And then what I kept coming to with that was that since that machine never existed, there's not any software for that.
Correct. And the intent for either the hardware or the software solution would be to have a platform that would allow you to emulate either in hardware or software what the 2068 is today. That would always be there as an option.
Of course.
And then Jeff, what about in essence, alternate cores like a Spectrum 128?
Yeah, and again, either emulation or hardware would be able to do that. For instance, on the hardware side, the FPGA that I spec'd could do virtually any 8-bit processor. So you could go down as low as Atari 2600 emulation, although that's been done before. Or you could go all the way up through the Spectrum line to what is it, the 3+, I think. Or you could even branch over to the CPC. So I mean, there are a lot of things that you could do.
Yes, it's more flexible, the
Wait,
hardware.
hang on, Gustavo. Greg has his hand up.
Hey,
Greg, shoot
hey,
your
baby,
shot.
how's it going?
Yeah, I have a
Okay.
question. Have you
Love you.
considered a hybrid solution that's part emulation and part hardware? I don't know if people are familiar with PyStorm. It's been used on the Amiga, the Atari ST. Essentially, they use the Pi to emulate the CPU, some of the RAM and video output. But they're using original hardware as well. So it's still running the hardware, but now they have something that's configurable. They can overclock the CPU. You can take an old stock Amiga 1200 and make it run, 20 times faster than it ever did with more memory and give HDMI output and file handling support, but it's still all using the real hardware. So you could do something similar to that. Well, the other alternative with all this is, I don't know if anyone's considered just running a core on the Spectrum Next. It has the capability of doing all that stuff. It's there's the Ngo, the clone of it as well. That if we were just made new cores for that, that's hardware that already exists.
Well, you bring up a good point about the PyStorm, and actually I had considered that, but let's be honest. The 2068 compared to an Amiga, for instance, the hardware is, shall we say, less than optimal.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, we could do something like that, but at that point, does it make sense, especially since there's not a lot of peripherals or anything for the 2068? Does it make sense to just go ahead and lock that down and emulate it either in hardware or software? So, if we're already looking at using a Raspberry Pi or something similar to emulate, similar to the PyStorm, then, well, you could just go ahead and emulate the whole computer.
I was just thinking mainly just because if you want to maintain compatibility with the ports, with the accessories, things like that, then you put enough hardware in there so that it still works with the Sinclair accessories and has the fingerboard.
Well, I will tell you right now, just sitting here, the FPGA that I'm looking at using, if for a hardware solution, you'd be able to, in that chip, without any extra logic around it, you could put a full TS2068 in that device, and you'd have the bus and the whole smash. So that kind of thing is absolutely possible if we wanted to stuff 2068 cases with boards so that the cases don't go wanting. But and the question here is there interest, I guess, in a enhanced 2068? Would people use something like that? That's really the question.
That's true. Hang on, Ryan. Gustavo, you had a question or?
No, just only to mention that the best solution is a mix, hardware plus software emulation. Because, for example, you can not get the possibility to run a C80 in 15 megahertz or more speed, because the silicon chip does not exist. In case, but using VHDL or new tools, you can run a C80 core more faster. And this is one of the best solution to put in hardware. And also for software, in case that the ROM or the programs the best solution is to use the library or the program exists actually on the Timex computer. And also, this is a very good combination because you have a high-speed machine, like, for example, when IBM sell the AT computer with the turbo switch. Why put the turbo switch on that? Because to emulate the low speed of the XT. In this case, the FPGA of Chef can be run faster, but maybe has a compatibility to get the original speed of the machine or full speed. That is the best of the worst.
Hey, Ryan.
Okay, well, I'm hearing a lot of fancy implementation possibilities, but I'm not hearing a high level specification of what enhanced means. You know, if we're going to ask the question of would there be interest in enhanced 2068, but we've not defined what that is other than saying how we might build something that so far just does what the original machine does.
Right.
So is enhanced mean new parts, does the same job, or does enhanced mean does something else? Now, I know there was mention of more memory and faster speed.
No, maybe more peripheral attached to the main board. That is enhanced.
Yeah, the way I look at it, Ryan, is that an enhanced 2068 would have probably it would have better graphics, it would have more memory, a faster CPU, and access to more modern peripherals, maybe a USB keyboard, something like that. It'd be something a little bit more advanced than the 2068 today, with modern parts, obviously.
And also maybe storage, no? Chef,
Oh yeah, obviously high density, higher speed storage.
Right.
Yes, this is a native. You don't need to plug in nothing. That is only just a standard feature.
And then ULA plus features, Jeff?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So
Carl?
Yeah, I don't know where the hell this hand thing is. I saw it somewhere. I can't fucking find it, so I don't. Excuse my language, but so I figure, well, the next best thing is my real hand, right? So
it's under reactions, by the way, Carl.
Oh, okay. Well, that's wonderful that they have it somewhere there. Anyway, okay, I see.
Chef, I have a question. The color is silver?
What's that?
The color of the computer is silver?
Well, I'll leave that up to Carl.
Well, my question, well, not question, but just comments is, I mean, kind of what we're looking at is doing something maybe, similar in my view, I guess, to what the Spectrum Next is, right? It's an FPGA based solution where you have cores that you can, apply to the FPGA and get hardware accurate, cycle level accurate emulation of the hardware. Plus, the reason they did the Next was, and the way they did is for peripherals, right? So that you really could hook up real hardware to the, to the Spectrum Next, where you can't really do that in a, in an emulated environment, right? You can't really hook up a real piece of hardware to that. And the other thing is, I mean, I don't know if there's a 2068 core that was ever, developed for that, for the Next. I know the first Next has a different FPGA, obviously, than the second one, the one they just came out with. So the core wouldn't, they'd have to be developed for both machines, right? Obviously. But the point is, I guess, is maybe like it kind of sounds like something like that, right, Jeff? Is that kind of what I'm?
Yeah, either hardware or software implementation, and one thing that we have to be aware of that's sort of hiding in the weeds here is that whatever we do, there's not, and I forget who brought this up. There's no software for it, so we'd have to have our 2068 community write software for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know,
Yeah,
I know
that's
Ryan has
that's
talked
my
about that.
that's my
Yeah.
doubt.
And so, you know, I mean, I kind of, what I would like to see maybe if this gets off the ground is something that goes into the 2068's case, right? Because that's already existing and we've got a keyboard. I mean, yeah, we can make a new case, but I don't think we have the, you know, the financial, where we could, you know, make a new designed case, right? And keyboard and the whole thing where they did with the Next.
Right.
There's just not, you know, that would cost, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars probably to get that off the ground. So, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, just from a cost standpoint, I think it would be easy to just put it into the 2068. At least you have something physical that already exists and has the right keyboard. But if we could make maybe the bottom half of the case change, maybe you could have a Spectrum bus, you know, expansion bus and a 2068 expansion bus on this board. So we could actually run Sinclair, you know, the Spectrum cores on your 2068 Next, right? If you wanted to, because obviously there's much more development, I think, going on for that particular side of the product than there is for the 2068 side, right? So I mean, but you're just kind of thinking ahead and saying, well, you can plug 2068 peripherals in, which they're, you know, they're growing. There's not a ton of them, but also there's, you know, the multitude of Spectrum, you know, that we don't need a twister board, right? It's already kind of built into the board.
Right.
So you can plug in whatever peripheral for whatever machine you wanted, and you can run the core. And actually, you could run a 2068 core, but it would just, you know, the twister would kind of already be built in, right? That way you could hook up 2068 core to Spectrum peripherals.
Yes, but I already had such a device, which was put in the same slot as the 2068 ROM, and you used a magnetic switch to switch between the Spectrum and the TS26 ROM. But unfortunately, mine got broken and subsequently lost somewhere in the process. But yes, such a thing did exist, and it worked well with tape save and also with the Larkin disk system.
What is this you're talking about? Is you
He's talking
just
about
a Spectrum ROM?
The ROM switch, yeah.
It's called
Okay.
WAM switch.
Wow, what do we got there?
Yeah, I had one too.
Yeah, I mean, you know, my personal 2068, I actually put the ROM in there, and I have a switch on the back, a toggle switch. But the ROM switch is just use the read switch. But yeah, but still on the 2068 physically, you only have a 2068 expansion bus. You know,
Right.
if we're going to do something with this, we would actually physically have both buses on the device. See what I'm saying? That way you don't have to, you know, get a twister board or something like that. Or, you know, I was thinking developing a 2068 core, maybe there's some benefit to putting some horsepower into doing that for the Next, right? Because that already exists, but it doesn't have a 2068 expansion bus, right? It has a Spectrum bus. Mm-hmm.
Carl, give me an example of the necessary Spectrum bus on back. What to connect what peripheral?
I don't know, anything like well,
the printer is compatible between both.
Covox.
Yeah, the printer is, but it's just you know, and that was made that way, right? Obviously, because it's a 1000 bus, but I mean, the Spectrum didn't change the bus that much as far as peripherals like that were concerned, because they wanted them to be compatible. But if you wanted to run, yeah, I kind of see your point is maybe like if you're going to run a div IDE, which is made for the Spectrum, that kind of is irrelevant when you already are talking about a fully FPGA hardware design, which you can already have solid state storage built into it anyway.
Yeah.
Right? You wouldn't really need a div IDE in that case. But I'm just kind of thinking, you know, the bus would be available for whatever peripheral that you would want to connect up to it. That would maybe we can't foresee, you know, or
but
go ahead.
The divide is developed before the Spectrum was designed, and one of the problems of the divide is limited because the Spectrum not have the capacity to get an external bank or external switching for the ROM. Just only replace the ROM with a single pin on the expansion bus.
And-
If you
Well-
need to create a divide for Timex, for example, 2068, you can plug in maybe a cartridge with the operating system of the storage, and that's it. Only use an input-output, and also be compatible like a printer. That is a problem, to run any specific hardware deployment for the Spectrum, and the Spectrum has a different hardware inside than the Timex.
Yeah.
That is my opinion.
Well, don't forget, I did mention making a Spectrum core.
But
So you
Carl,
could actually, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, let's get Ada has his
Oh,
hand up.
okay, sorry. Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead, Ada.
It is nice that you guys can design anything within the context of your own knowledge. But my key question is this. I'm not a design engineer, I'm a system engineer. Where is the market? Who is going to buy this new gadget? And
It's
why would you spend all the money, time, and when you cannot sell anything? Who is buying? I would buy it just for the hell of it because I'm curious. But the young kids, are they going to buy? Hell no. So
Well,
it's the marketing question.
Absolutely. Your point is 100% on, Ada, and frankly, the market is very, very small. It's about 50% of the people who are here tonight, just off the top of my head, and another 9 people, in North America. Hey, Ryan.
Well, I would just ask then, in terms of like, so he said for peripheral connection, I would assume that would be modern devices, because what Gustavo just said of what Spectrum's add-on would you plug into a Spectrum bus? Well, what 2068 add-on would you plug into the 2068 bus that we haven't already replaced by something else? So we're talking about connections to other things like a modern printer and things like that. And there was mention of, high res graphics and higher amounts of RAM. And so how would those be used? And I think the answer is that you have to write the software for them. And so maybe we need to show of hands of how many people are itching for higher resolution stuff that they have to write software for.
No,
Well-
the high resolution is to connect the VGA monitor, for example, or HDMI.
No,
To use
Gustavo,
point-
no, we're
Yeah, the
talking
point-
about
the point is,
ULL
Gus-
plus features, not.
This is exactly what Timex ran into. They built a pretty decent computer, but they had no software for it. And Ryan, you bring up a good point. And the whole thing about this project, and like I said before, the dirty little secret is that we can build gangbuster hardware or software emulation, but we need to write applications for it. And how many of us here could possibly do that?
Right.
I mean, I can write software if I'm backed into a corner like a rat in a trap, but
Well, we know that I wrote software, a lot of software back in the day, because I didn't play the games that everyone else was playing. But if I were to write software today to this enhanced machine, who's going to be there to see it? And will it fall silently in the forest?
Well, let me throw this out as just a suggestion. Maybe we should put our, the development efforts into maybe recreating the ULA, not the ULA, the SCLD that's in the 2068. So we have a replacement for that thing. They did that for the Spectrum, right? And, maybe that would make more sense because we could add things to it, modern things to it, right? So we could, in essence, be upgrading the 2068 that we have. Granted, you have to take the chip off, and that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother can of worms to deal with that. I mean, it's not that hard, but it's not an easy thing to do, obviously. But that way we could, I'm just saying that hardware development effort could go into an FPGA that we could put into our existing 2068s, but we could put all kinds of extra, things into that In fact, it could be like you said, Jeff, it could emulate the Z80 and just totally forget about the hardware that's in the 2068 itself, other than to just use it for, physical connections and things like that. But maybe because we don't have a SCLD replacement for the American ones.
Right.
And there may be some more market for that eventually. I don't think there's that much right now either.
Right.
But that would kind of kill two birds with one stone, because you would be adding features to the existing 2068, which you would need software to take advantage of. So somebody would have to, obviously write that software to take advantage of it. But it would also give us a replacement 2068 SCLD that would do the things that we needed to do now, but we could have HDMI out, for instance, right? Instead of, it would give us our bright on our RGBs if we wanted to hook it up to an RGB monitor, which some people might do that, but I know for me, I would like to see HDMI video, obviously, right? So that would just feel so easy to hook it up to a modern monitor. And, you could add extra sound, you could add, bank switching, you could figure that out and get that kind of, how Timex was going to do it. Maybe we could put stuff in the, this FPGA that would, hook into that and make it easier to actually see that realized. But anyway, just some thoughts.
Tim.
Yeah, so one thing I was thinking about was, if you do the extensions, let me say this right. If you do an FPGA type of piece of hardware that has the ability for more memory, more features, more higher graphics, and so on, you may not be able to do anything with it right now, but there's some potential. In other words, if you build it, get it to emulate the 2060 completely, someone can come along and say, well, gee, I feel like modifying the ROM and fixing the bank switching issue. Let me go do that. You can't do that with current hardware, but with new hardware, you possibly could, because basically the ROM is essentially software. It's not something that's burned into a chip. So it's one of those things. If you build it, maybe people will come.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
that could be possible. But in this case, it's necessary to create another chip. Is the bank switching controller chip. That is the next point. We have all the resources, but the problem is, what is the peripheral that you need to connect in the machine with this hardware, because it's higher cost to include this chip in each peripheral. For example, you cannot put a printer, a Centronic board, with the FPGA as a bank switching controller, because you have many, I don't know, $50 for the FPGA plus $3 for the latch. That is the problem. The cost is the problem to use the bank switching schema that the Timex created originally. Because it's not simple. Yeah.
Jeff, do you have enough chaos? Oh, let's get Ada. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm thinking of client server type of application, because everybody has a Windows PC or a Mac attached to a network attached to printers. So why don't we have the new development Timex Sinclair be a client Windows, that the client, Timex Sinclair client, communicates with the Windows machine or Apple machine and uses its peripherals?
The problem of that is because I think that Microsoft, with the original printer sharing protocol for network, maybe it was discontinued, and maybe in the near future will discarded in the next operating system. And
But
also when you need a special controller.
You're assuming using, whatever's built. You can't, if you're going to have a multi-platform solution, it can't use Microsoft's proprietary sharing solution. It has to be something that works, well across.
Yes. No, okay, but the network sharing protocol, the TCP/IP, our TCP/IP, maybe it's changed and was discarded. Like, for example, the Telnet. Telnet was discarded on the HTTP, no S, was discarded for the worldwide community. It's not used
Well,
now for any browser now.
you know, you guys bring up some good points, and like I said, some of this stuff could be built into either, you know, it could be built into this either SCLD replacement, right? We can have Wi-Fi capability, for instance, right? Granted, there have to be some software that backs that up, but I mean, the hardware has to be there first, right? I mean, if it's not there, but I think that would be not low-hanging fruit, but it would be a killer app, right? Wi-Fi. I mean, I just turn my 2068 on and I can connect to my Wi-Fi.
Yes,
Right.
but Wi-Fi is the connection, but you need to high-level protocol to run under Wi-Fi. And this protocol need more MIPS to run because it normally uses SSL or
Well,
another high
you know,
consumption
Again,
CPU.
again, that could be built into the FPGA. The
Right.
FPGA can do that.
right.
It
And
wouldn't be
there-
relying on the Z80.
there's the Westby, which is based on the ESP32 processor module, and it runs a web server. You connect to, you know, its web server from your PC, and you can upload files to it, and then you can load those files directly into an 81 or a 1000 through the, what is it, the microphone or ear jack, I don't remember exactly. But it also picks off the video signal and turns that into VGA, or you can hook up a TFT LCD directly to it. And this is all, you know, in one little module that's about 3 inches long. So, you know, it's not impossible to, you know, attach new hardware and do creative things with it. It doesn't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be running over telnet. It doesn't have to, you know, use a specific, you know, manufacturer's printer sharing protocol or whatever. You know, you as you know, Ada said, you build it and they come, or not.
Well, I think what some of that was, I think we needed to divide these enhancements into categories of compatible and incompatible. Okay. Compatible is like, yeah, you get the file and the thing does all the magic and it puts it in the same input that it always had in a compatible way, right? You don't have some new driver running to talk TCP/IP or whatever the hell to do something, the tiniest bit of internet interaction or something like that. An incompatible enhancement is higher res graphics. It's just incompatible. You won't see it unless you make a compatibility layer, like, oh well, we're gonna pixel enhance the existing fonts or something, so the underlying system has no idea. You can do stuff like that, sure. Adding an HDMI output is compatible because the hardware has no idea. You just up converting it, and so it's perfectly compatible. But stuff that's sitting there waiting for all this software to be written, it is still a bit speculative. And yes, you can make the argument that yes, you must have that first before you can have the high-res software, sure. But I'm not so sure that the high-res software will ever show up. Because again, since it wasn't in an existing system 40 years ago, no software was ever written that we're just going to pop a tap file in and run.
Right.
Which is what we're doing now. Right. So it makes it easy.
Yeah.
And that there's a handy piece of software already written.
Hey, Adam. Your hand.
Hey, hi guys. I wanted to follow up on something that Ryan was saying there. So this weekend when we were using the 300 baud modem software, I tried to load it up using OS64 to see if it would, quote, magically load up in 68 column mode. Now, is there a way that these higher res modes would be compatible with BASIC? So like it would just, you know, kind of understand and not even care that it's running in a higher res, and then they could be adjusted just a little bit or maybe not even at all to work?
So, I mean, the short answer is all of this stuff the beauty of all of this stuff is it does not exist in a fixed burned ROM. You know, the one of the cool things that I learned from Jeff is that when you turn on an FPGA, it doesn't actually have any programming in it. There's a little chip that sits next to it that the FPGA goes and gets its, you know, programming from. And so that's how you're able to, you know, do all of that kind of switching between cores and stuff without any problem. And so, you know, to your point, Adam, yes, the basic could be modified to you know, talk to the ULA plus and address the ULA plus's extra features. You know,
Okay.
there's certainly plenty of ROM space for it.
Jeff, we can't hear you.
Wah, 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 wah. So we have to get out of the mindset of looking back at the 2068 hardware, because now that we have a fast mass storage device, it becomes more like a RAM-based computer where you can just, you know, load a different basic in, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point where, just like I said, still using the 2068's case. So you have someplace to put this. Otherwise, what are we going to put it in? You know, I mean, I don't know that there's anything anymore that's kind of, you know, turnkey designed for something like that. Well, you know, like these little keyboards that they used to make back in the day.
Yep.
Keyboard cases, right? I mean, there was quite a few of them back in the day, but I don't think there's any now, really.
Well, yeah, well, Carl, you know, depending on the kind of quality you want, you know, you could do a 3D printed case as well.
Right.
It, you know, wouldn't look like an injection molded case, but
you know, then that kind of, you know, now I can see the point of like building a new board around a FPGA instead of a SCLD replacement, because of that you're kind of still stuck with the hardware that's in the 2068, right?
Right.
Whereas a new board, you're emulating all that anyway. We're not emulating, kind of, you are with the FPGA, but so you don't really need it there.
yeah.
So you can get rid of it and create a new board, and then kind of, you know, the field's wide open to you. It's just what physical interfaces are you going to put on that board, right? And obviously HDMI, you know, it's got to read the cassette recorder if you're going to load stuff. And that kind of brings me to software a little bit, is we probably wanted to, you know, look at the evolution of the Spectrum, right? It went to the 128, right? And when it went to the 128, now we booted up into the menu system. You know, we don't just come up to a copyright screen anymore. We come up to a menu system, so you can pick, you know, I want 48K Spectrum mode, I want 128K Spectrum mode, or, you know, I think there was a calculator and some other crap that was on that menu too. But yeah, but anyway, there's you know, that's kind of where maybe people would start developing things for it, because we could have that kind of backward compatibility. We could make it run 128 code, right? We could make it run Spectrum code, you know. So we're kind of you know, this is kind of a master of none, but, you know, can run everything that we can throw at, kind of like a Next, but it's a 2068 version of it, I suppose, because the expansion bus would be obviously made for that.
Yeah, what I would hope was that we could have something like a Spectrum Next, although not as expensive and not made with unobtainium.
Ryan, you have the last word on this. And then we're going to change
last
topics.
word. Oh, okay.
Make it good.
Well, yeah, I guess my position so far is don't really care. FPGA, gobbledygook, you know, that's a lot of hardware noodling, and I know you hardware guys like that, but in the end, what is the top level spec of what this needs to actually do? And so if you're talking about, oh, you know, like the evolution, well, you get far, you know, it's not just late 80s anymore either. It's further down the road. You know, you could go all the way to what is the essence of the machine. Like if you talk about putting this into an old case, well, we always talk a lot about, you know, Mike can have a better keyboard. Well, then why am I putting it in the old case? Why don't I just put it in a new box that maybe looks like a miniature 2068, and then I plug in a USB keyboard to that.
Mhm.
I know my old case probably won't stand to be unscrewed and screwed back together much anymore. It's getting pretty brittle. Just ask Carl. And
Yeah,
so
especially those three in the
there's,
back. Yeah, go ahead.
you know, so I'd rather just like buy one of those reproduction Spectrum cases, put it in that. But you know, it won't look like a 2068, of course. But then we're talking about the evolution. So I don't know why it needs to look like the old thing. So I think we need to have a thing that's the old thing, and then we have a thing that's an upgrade. But I think when you go into much more capability, it's nice to think about and wave lots of hands around, but it may just sit there. I mean, I suppose Spectrum Next has enough community. I don't know what those guys are programming. Are they really doing anything interesting, or is it just more demos?
It's a lot of
Well,
games.
I think TJ just reviewed a new game for the new Spectrum Next, the Kickstarter 2 Next. It's a whole.
So yeah, imagine it's a lot of games, and presumably they're enhanced in some way. I don't know. But again, for us, it would be, well, we'd have to write some of those games, because if we make it anything else, I guess maybe it's more of like, what would this be doing that a Spectrum Next isn't? I suppose is another way of looking at it.
Well, the other, I do see the point of you can't put the cart before the horse, right? The horse has to be there to draw the cart. If you don't have a horse, then you're dead in the water, no matter what. So if we don't have the hardware to allow people to develop on, nobody's ever going to develop anything on it because there's no hardware to develop it on, right? So, I mean, I know the community for the Timex side is pretty small, but I think you might get some people across the pond interested in it because they're like, hey, look at what these guys are doing over in America.
Well, that's a more interesting angle, I think.
Because, like I said, it's not like we're throwing the Spectrum out with the bathwater. We can run Spectrum stuff on it, right? We'll make a Spectrum core, right? Or a 128 core or whatever. So we're kind of not, we're still kind of surrounding, it with a lot of support and software, but that way it may give somebody, somebody else that's developing on the next, a reason to develop for this as well. Anyway.
What is the difference between 128 and any regular Spectrum? Why I need to choose the new?
Well, because the 128 added the sound chip, it added the bank switching. I mean, it added, I don't know what they call the basic, but you don't have to type keywords in anymore. You can actually type PRINT.
Yeah.
So it got rid of the keyword stuff. That's why, like the Spectrum 2s and stuff like that, they don't have any keywords on the keyboard. They're just like a regular keyboard.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a big difference, when Amstrad took over and kind of expanded the Spectrum, right?
Good point. In this case, you use a standard keyboard. No need any special keys with the names
right.
on top.
Jack Doheny wrote a very small utility for the existing 2068 basic that lets you do that. Type in keywords or type in, programs and converts it into keywords.
On real hardware?
Yeah, it was written for the 2068. It's just a little shim of a bit of code. And it'll let you make all the typos you want.
Yeah.
No,
well, like I said,
for the basic perspective, the Spectrum 128 not have more resolution than the
no,
regular
because
Spectrum.
the hardware didn't have more resolution. But
exactly, it's better than the 2068 hardware.
I would like to see what Jeff has to say, since we have to close this up in just a minute or two with this topic. Jeff, what do you say about what we've talked about?
Sorry, Jeff. My apologies.
No. What I've come away from this is that if we're going to do this, we need to come up with a feature set or a requirement specification in my parlance to give everyone an idea of what this thing is going to do. And with the understanding that any advanced capabilities are going to require software development on our part.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to also mention that, remember, we do have a budget for something like this. We have money we can use. So
that's right.
It's not like it's going to cost us anything. We already have $2,000 running around to be used for something.
Treasurer Tim.
Yep.
So speaking of Tim sent me an email. Was it this week, Tim? I mean, I've already lost track of time.
Just a few days ago, yeah.
A few days ago. Okay. All right.
Are we moving on to a new topic? Is that
we are moving on to a new topic?
I would like to thank Jeff then for what he had to say and all that, and everyone for contributing to that little talk.
Yeah, appreciate the work. I mean, you showed a diagram there. Obviously, you put some work into it, so definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, that was. Thank you, sir. So Tim sent me 3 photos from. What did you say this was? 93. Can you tell people what we're going to look at in a second here, Tim?
Sure. So back in 1993, I just moved to Dayton, Ohio. Starting in 1991, the local Timex Sinclair folks started using the Dayton Microcomputer Association, the DMA, Computer Fest as a place to meet. I think they were running out of steam for doing a national U.S. Timex Sinclair meeting. So since there was a lot of folks in the Midwest, they used Dayton as a central point. It was a big computer show. So there's a lot of people attending anyhow. And I went once in 92. I got there and I wanted to meet people at the dinner the night before, like on the night of the Saturday or something. But you sit in a restaurant and there's some people at that table, there's some people at that table, there's some people at that table, and you really couldn't mingle in a restaurant. So once I started living there, I'm like, screw that. I really want to meet these people. I'm going to host a barbecue at my place. I'm going to buy some burgers. Somebody brought some sodas. I rented some chairs. I had a picnic table for my neighbor. And for less than $40, $50, I hosted 20, 25 people over on a Saturday night at the show. And I got a chance to mingle and meet, and everyone got a chance to mingle and meet. And so these pictures are 3 from the very first year I did that, based upon where they were in a photo album. I was pretty sure it was 1993. So,
okay,
like Dave wants to bring them up. We can sit down and see if we can identify who these people are.
Right. So I'm going to bring up the one where we should be able to identify at least one person, almost with some reasonable confidence. I
can identify 3. So
yeah, I was able to pick out 3 of the folks in here. Is it the same 3, Tim? Are we looking?
So I know, so from the far left is Don Walterman. He was at that time from Detroit. Then he moved to California, and then I think he's now in Montana. Person in the white Newport shirt, I do not know. Then there's Bob Swogger from Chicago.
Yep.
And of course, Keith Watson next to him in the white shirt. Red shirt, I'm not too sure.
I think that's Willie.
Don't know. He's
I'm
not
pretty
here
sure that's Willie.
Could be.
It looks very much like him. I mean, if think Willie is younger.
Yes.
No, that's not Willie.
I think if everybody is younger.
That's not Willie.
What's that?
I don't believe that's Willie.
Okay. All right. Well, you would know better than any of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to step on toes, but
All right.
You were there, Paul. So
that's my cooler in the corner.
Right. And so, Paul,
let's go to the next one.
Did we get?
All right.
Let me get this. Okay.
The kid in the middle is my son.
Ah. Okay.
Oh, we were wondering.
And there's Paul there with the little white. Yep. Okay.
The white shirt with the orange thing on the back, right?
That's Carol Davis.
Yeah, that's me with my slightly gray hair.
That's Carol next to you, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I think now the gentleman standing in the yellow, I do not know.
But he's from
Cleveland,
Smug.
I believe.
Sorry.
No, I think it has a smug. I think it has a smug hat on.
Yeah.
Okay, Milwaukee.
Yes, right. Or Southern Michigan. All right, I'm in the blue, right behind next to the left of the guy in the yellow. In the
Oh,
far back there with the beard and glasses, that's Paul. Sorry, no, Frank Davis.
Yeah, that's
Pearl's
Frank
husband.
looking off to the side.
okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, just to the right, that's John M. Pellozeri.
Oh,
He and the
Yep.
next one over is Don Walterman. They did Qbox USA. They were from Detroit.
okay.
Yep.
The guy in the shirt, the white shirt with a little pattern, I do not know who that is, nor the person with glasses next to him. So
That's not Gary Ganger.
no, I don't think Gary's in this one.
Okay.
All right, go to
But
the third
I'm gonna
one.
Find the other one. Here we go.
All right, so obviously them in the blue with a cool hacker shirt.
That's you. Okay. All right.
Yep. Oh, so the guy in the striped shirt, I think that might be Don Lambert.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
Oh wow. Okay.
Okay. Now, the guy in the dark blue shirt, I'm pretty sure that is Doug Gillespie from Cleveland.
Okay,
Yeah, him
I'll buy that.
And the guy in the white shirt, the gray hair, I do not know.
Over here on the right.
Oh.
The guy on the right. You're saying you don't
I don't
know?
think it's Gary Ganger because Gary had a full set of hair. Now, the guy in the white shirt in the distance, that possibly could be Mel Laverne. I'm not too sure though.
Mel was a short guy.
Was okay. Because I don't know if I know he came 1 year, but I don't know if he came the first year because Mel and Doug Laverne came from Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and Doug brought his steel drums 1 year and played them.
Gosh. That's crazy. Your neighbors must have loved you.
Well, actually, the picnic table was from the neighbor. I got
okay.
The chairs were from MWR on base. I think I rented them for $8 for a day or two.
So
I
here's a
remember
question.
going and buying buns and stuff. You know, not
Here's a
so.
question.
This whole thing cost me maybe $40 to do.
Well, we can see you bought a watermelon and some Frito-Lays.
Yeah.
Or someone brought them. Yeah, I can't remember. It's been so long.
So who took the pictures, Tim?
That was my wife.
Okay.
All right. Well, that was very amusing.
And we did it for a total of 4 years, but that was the only year I think she took pictures that I found. I haven't looked through the rest of our albums, but I knew we at least had those. So I remember seeing them.
It was 1 year I spent part of my time in my driveway, in your driveway.
Is
Could be.
1992? The date is 1992?
No, 1993. I did it from 93 to 96, 4 different years. So I moved there in, pretty sure it was 93.
Okay, very nice.
So did people bring hardware, or was this just a social hour, basically?
Mostly just a social hour. I didn't have a table or anything set up to do hardware. I think Paul, you might have actually brought a bunch of stuff and sold some stuff there. I can't remember.
Wagon.
Yeah, but of course we were all attending the Computer Fest, so that's where that was all more buying and selling. So I didn't really have a whole lot of things to set up for people to demonstrate stuff. Don't think we ever really did, but I liked it because again, everyone got a chance to meet and greet, talk to them. Whereas in a restaurant, you really couldn't move from table to table to table.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember Gary Ganger brought over a case or two of soda. That was his contribution. He was the local guy. And I remember buying burgers and buns and just doing, getting the barbecue going. And so a few people brought some stuff, the chips and things, but so it was all pretty much on the cheap and it's very sociable.
And it was all people that you knew through the newsletters, right?
Yeah. And so I did was since I attended the conference, the computer show, I helped Gary with the computer museum booth. I also would go to the mechanical affinity booth and say, hey guys, here's some flyers about how to get to my place. With a little map about how to get, it's about 10 miles from the Hara Arena.
Well, Tim, most people watching this aren't going to know who Mechanical Affinity was.
That was Paul and Frank Davis.
Yeah.
So I basically, they were the locals there who were the biggest vendors Sinclair wise, and say, hey, for people you see coming in, the Sinclair folks, give them this little flyer that we're going to meet at my place this time. I think the thing shut down like 6, and by 7, I'd have the grill going. So,
And
I
a
would
bunch of
think-
randos coming over to your house.
I would think by 93, because that's 10 years pretty much almost since Timex pulled out. I know the market flourished for a little while. I'd probably say to the late 80s, but I would think probably by that time it was kind of dead, wouldn't it? By 93,
no,
10
we
years
had a
later.
fair amount of business at the tables.
Really?
yeah, you still had
Yeah.
Update magazine and some other newsletters still around.
Yeah.
The Sync Link out of Toronto was still active. Cats was still active. So still user groups active and still newsletters. And I think Update was in the 90s. It was really just getting started almost in the early 90s. So, I mean, they ran until 96, 97, I think, for Update. And so there was still a fair bit of people. I think the majority coming to the group were more 2068 folks. Still a few did QLs. I think the QBox USA was run on a QL. That was Don Walterman and John Pellozeri did that out of Detroit.
Was that a bulletin board system?
Yes.
Yep.
So
Okay.
QBox is written by Jan Breenbeck out of the Netherlands, and they just ran on their QL locally.
I'm going to call that one tomorrow.
Yeah, right.
I think it's long gone.
Oh,
Yeah,
by the
I think
way,
it probably
Adam,
died.
I used M-Term too.
You used it back in the day?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Do you remember if you had to use a phone plugged into the modem to dial, or did it dial touch tone automatically? Do you remember?
Oh God, I can't remember anymore.
Okay.
It did.
I was really
pulse.
shocked.
The modem can only do pulse dialing.
For what, Adam?
I'm
2050
talking
modem.
about. Well, if we get a chance to talk about what we did on Saturday, I'll bring it up there. I don't want to interrupt you guys.
I was going to segue into the much smaller Albuquerque user group where they can actually sit around, a table at a pizza joint and talk to each other.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing the pictures, Tim.
The modem normally, the old switches, the public switches, normally use pulse. Then AT&T moved to use DTMF. And depend of the central office, if a new switch, maybe not use more dialing for the rotary switches.
Well, I'm talking about the modem itself.
Okay.
What's the read switches used for pulsing the line?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a one read switch in there, read relay, obviously, but I don't think there's a DTMF like encoder or decoder to actually make the tones. Right. I think even with M-Term 2, you're going to have to do it the way we were doing it, Adam. You're going to have to dial it on.
The reason I ask is because we first were misunderstanding what was going on. Maybe I'll back up and is it time for us to talk about our meeting on Saturday?
Yes, it is. And I've spotlighted you, Adam.
All right. Hi, everybody. This is Adam Triunfo. I met with Carl and Ryan on Saturday. They came over to my place. And Carl got here first, spent a couple hours. Ryan got here a little bit later. And altogether, we spent about 8 or 9 hours together, I guess. And I took some pictures. And the first thing I'll bring up, since we're talking about it already, is Tim had sent me 5 modems, I think, all supposedly non-working. And I think 2 of them had cables that would connect to the 2068, and 3 of them did not. And so the last time Carl was here around 2 weeks ago, I gave those to him. And so Carl had this in mind when he came over, that we were going to test modems, which I thought was going to be 2. But it turned out there were 7 we could test. And Carl was like, "You have a phone line. I don't. We got to get this done." And we ran into some trouble because it turns out that the cover of the manual for M-Term 2 just says simply M-Term. And M-Term 2 is not archived except as a cartridge, where that cartridge came from, I have no idea. Where did it come from, David?
I think it's from Zebra.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because Timex never made, or Anchor never made a cartridge.
Yeah, no, I think Zebra put it on a cartridge.
I still have software somewhere.
I've got a cassette and I will archive it. I thought I had archived it, and I actually have a manual too, and I can do that as well.
Well, the manual for M-Term 2 is archived.
Okay.
It says M-term on it, but once you start going through it, it talks about certain things, and that's what I want to bring up here. It talks about putting and putting it into touch tone mode, and then it will automatically, from what I understand from the manual anyway, make the tones. But I might be misunderstanding, because without having the software, it's
Well, the
not apparent.
software may
Oh.
be
Yeah,
making the tones.
the software could generate the tones, but how would
Yeah,
they get
maybe-
on the phone line?
Well, it would click the relay on and start sending the tones out somehow. I don't know. Because I
Well,
mean,
they-
it modulates and demodulates, right? So modem noises, right? Those are tones.
Yeah, but that happens in the modem chip.
If it picks up the sound output from the back plane, it can use the AY chip to
Yeah.
generate the DTMF tones.
Yeah, it could. Okay, we'll have to look into that.
Well, I don't know. I'll test it out, and I'll confirm or disprove whether that works once the software is going, I guess.
You need to put operational to zoom the audio chip plus the modem signal to drive the line in case you use the AY chip to use as a DTMF encoder.
Right, that's what
Yeah,
we're
well,
wondering is
the modem.
that what happens?
Looking at the schematics from the modem, there's no sound thing that
Uh-huh.
goes into it
Okay.
that I've seen. So
Okay.
And this is the
Easy
actual,
test.
this is how I was dialing, you know.
Yeah.
I bought this to test the voice over IP line. Didn't think I'd ever use it except to, you know, test it. But
that
it turned out
genuine
I
AT&T?
needed this. What's that?
Is that
This is
genuine
manual
AT&T?
dialing.
It says it's AT&T.
Oh
I
my
don't know.
gosh,
It's like
look at
so
that.
cheap. I don't know how it really is. But
That's the
but
one
yeah,
guy
without
that
this
told
phone,
me
I couldn't have done it.
subcontracted. That's not
Okay.
Western Electric.
We'll stop interrupting you, Adam.
Oh, I don't care. It doesn't bother me. We should talk to my wife. No, I'm just teasing.
So you guys ran through 7 modems.
Right, in the evening. Well, first I got frustrated. Well, when we first got here, or when Carl first got here, we did set up a CPM system because about a month ago, one was donated to us, and Carl got it up and running again. And maybe I don't know how to share a screen. How do I share a screen?
There's a green
Share
button at the
screen
bottom of
button.
your screen that says share screen.
Okay.
Maybe?
Green button in the middle on mine.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's see.
Arrow.
Okay. Can you all see a picture of us, or at least 2 people here?
There's like you got to click on the thing, and there's a couple steps.
I don't know. I thought I clicked on it. Dang it.
Is this one of the pictures that you emailed?
I did. All of these pictures I've emailed, actually.
Okay, I'll go. For
Let's see here. Now I've lost my Zoom window. Man, technology and Adam. This is why I'm using 300 baud modems.
this is why you're using 2068.
Hey, I used to sell 300 watt modems.
Yeah, it says I'm
General
sharing my
data.
screen. I don't know. Yeah.
Is it a picture of the 3 of you, or just Ryan and Carl? Oh, there we go. Oh
Is
no,
it
no,
working now?
no, you're sharing your OBS screen.
Well, sorry.
Here, I'll turn that off. I think
All
I
right,
can
turn
do
that off for me. David, maybe you can show the pictures and we'll go through yours.
Yeah, I'll find it.
Yeah,
I'll
why don't you
find
do
it.
that?
All right, so I'll bring up the picture of Carl. Come on, open up, damn it. Technical difficulties all around.
Oh, just to say, plug in the shirts.
Oh, right.
I like your choice of color, Carl.
Yeah, it's a good color.
Uh-huh. Okay, here we
Except
go.
for
Carl,
my
Carl
my
not
belly.
wearing a purple shirt.
Well, I'm wearing the gray one. That's the 2068 Timex shirt.
Yes.
Is that a digital data scope?
Is it a what?
On the
No.
picture on top of the desk, underneath the monitor, is it a digital data scope?
No, it's a K Pro.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
K Pro 2.
Suitcase.
But they made they made those kind of things. as
Yeah,
well.
Digital did. Digital Group. Yeah. Okay, Adam.
All right. So I don't know if it's going to be hard with me. The next picture is going to be of the setup in that
Ah,
one.
Okay, I'll open that picture.
Okay.
All right.
Sorry
Who's the
about my
dog?
ineptitude here.
This one's a little fuzzy.
Well, it's because I didn't take pictures of us because I forgot. I was taking pictures of hardware.
Don't forget the dog in the back. You can't.
Yeah,
don't
that's
miss the
Ellie. That's my dog.
Are you
Probably
seeing
waiting
the,
outside this dog wondering or door.
did I get the right picture?
So yeah, that's the one. Now maybe we can show. This is really. Let me try to see if I can try sharing once more. I'll just.
Okay.
But in the meantime, Carl, why don't you talk about what you did to the CPM system to get it up and running?
Well, basically, it probably would have worked, but anybody that's in the electronics field and does refurbs and repairs knows about the reefer caps. And of course the power supply in that is an Aztec, which is kind of ironic because Aztec made I forget how much things they made, right? They obviously make our modulators and our Timexes and the Sinclairs, but they also made power supplies. They made a bunch of other things too. But anyway, so yeah, I didn't really want to power that thing on until we kind of went through it, right? And obviously changed the reefer caps out. I actually totally recapped the whole power supply just cause. Although some people don't believe in that thing, and granted, I measured all the caps and most of them were probably fine. They would have been fine. And then I did the same thing with the monitor board, right? The CRT board. I recapped that. There was one cap on there that was definitely bad when I measured it, so caught that one. But I kind of introduced a new problem with that, which I'll talk about maybe later. And then there's like 2 electrolytic caps on the motherboard, the digital board, which just kind of blows my mind. There's only 2 of them. Look at boards these days for a computer, and there's probably like 50 of them. But anyway, so changed all the caps out in it, and I think there was a couple in the keyboard too, right? Just change them out just because.
Am I sharing my screen now?
We are seeing 2 preview images.
Okay, great.
There we go. You got it.
Okay.
That's cool.
All right. So I'm going to show the CPM stuff. Can you see this properly, sort of?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a close-up picture of the CPM machine. And we were trying to get on top a composite monitor working. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, Carl?
Yeah. So Kevin, I think it's not on the list because I think that email's separate from the list, obviously, because this time it's not a K-Pro group. But he mentioned that the Cornucopia magazine or something like Micro Cornucopia or one of the other magazines, they had a composite mod. And so I built that up on a perf board and put it into the K-Pro, and it didn't show anything on my TV, just a blue screen. But my TV's from the early 2000s, so yeah. Then that monitor that's on the top there, Ryan brought that. That's like I don't know, it's an amber, little bitty amber composite input monitor.
Yeah.
And we hooked it up to that, and we got stuff on it, but I could never get it to lock in. Get it stable. But you could see words and things on it. So obviously the composite mod must be, working. I did scope it out, and at least I saw some signals on there, but yeah. So then anyway, I've ordered a new one from another guy that just recently did it, and he got it to work on a monitor. So I'm more hopeful for that. But anyway, that's.
And the reason I'm bringing this up, the CPM, is because I have some questions. And here's the disk that we booted, or this is the basic 80, and this is the CPM version 2.2 disk. But the reason I bring this up, and I'll get to some else of what we did, but the 2068 was going to have a CPM module, and was it going to, if it had been released in America and not just in Portugal, was it going to be like the FDD 3000 or something completely different? What was the deal with that going to be?
It was going to use the microdrive cartridges.
Okay, so it would have supported 68 columns and not 80 columns.
It would have supported 64 columns. It might have supported 80. I mean, they certainly wrote the software for 80, but okay. The timeline was that originally the thought was for regular floppy disks, but they weren't going to be available remotely on time, and they did have the micro drives. And so Lon Hildreth went out to digital in California and took a 2068 with him and some micro drives, and his manual, and apparently he left his manual there.
Okay.
I had to send him a manual a few months back because he didn't have a manual for his 2068.
The question: the Kipro computer has a hard drive?
No,
No.
not this one. That's a
It does not.
no.
Oh.
This used,
Full-height
this
floppy, I
Kpro
think.
was designed for 2 full height disk drives, but it has 2 half heights in it right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mhm.
correct.
Because
I mean,
the tandem hard drive on those ears is the size of the cover.
Yes, it is. Yeah, the
But the
Kpro
Pro-
10 has, but there's the Kpro 10 doesn't have those covers. It has one floppy drive, and then the hard drive is in, behind the sheet metal.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah, this this had a double density upgrade and probably got
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
new slim drives.
Yeah, they put those are Panasonic drives they put in there.
Okay.
But why don't you talk about this, Carl, and I'll go through the 3 we have. We have this is
Well, you
your-
know, we have seen this before, but I hadn't had the label. You know, I got that label. I got 2 of those from David, which I guess we think is what they were using on the one that they were going to Timex in Portugal was going to actually make.
right.
Because it's kind of a reverse color scheme, right?
And also the
and-
side we have here, the side labels.
Right. So, you
And all
know,
the
I
back
mean, I
labels.
know Paul was mentioning putting wax and stuff. I was like, I don't know how the hell I'm going to get wax into all those little bitty letters. I mean, maybe if I was 30 years younger, I could probably do that. But I just was like, I'm just going to mask it off. It doesn't look bad, I don't think. But so at least you can still have the, the embossed lettering that's in there. And then obviously that is a keyboard I got from Stuart. Stuart sent us like, I don't know, 3 or 4 keyboards. And he sent one of them. One of them was a Timex 1000, right? Because that's the
Just
enter and the
and
delete.
delete.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other ones I have from him are obviously ZX 81 ones, the British ones. But so that's it's not a new keyboard. It is a new keyboard, but it's 40 years old, apparently.
Now,
You know,
I don't
so
know. I don't
go
know if you
ahead.
can see the detail here. I wanted to show his paint job, which is really, really good. I mean, I'm sure it does not come through here in this meeting, but it's
Well,
like fantastic.
It looks
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, for the benefit of the folks who are watching this, haven't watched anything else.
Mhm.
There's a museum in Portugal that has a ton of Timex Sinclair stuff because it's a museum dedicated to the Portuguese Timex enterprise. And one of the things sitting in the display case is a silver Timex 1000 looking thing, which turns out to be a prototype that Timex Middlebury, the folks in Connecticut, built when they were initially thinking about building the Timex 1500. And the idea was that it would have 16K of RAM in it. That would get rid of that RAM pack wobble problem. They decided to, go with the silver color versus the black. And so what Carl's doing is recreating that thing. And then so this is actually not from Portugal. I mean, it's not a product of Timex Portugal. It's a product of Timex Middlebury, and the folks in Portugal are the ones who came up with the idea of let's put it in this Spectrum looking case and give it the rubber keys and stuff. And that's what they ended up going with.
Yeah, I like the idea of it. It probably would have been faster if they'd been able to do it that way, but I mean, I don't know.
Well,
Let's see,
because
what
don't
else?
forget
Go ahead.
they had to develop the SLD that they actually ultimately used in the 1500. So yeah.
Right, that's right. The 1500. Yeah.
So
So
And
Carl-
don't forget the other thing too is the RAM pack on the 1500 that exists today. The rubber keyed one. The SCLD actually takes the RAM chip select line kind of off of the bus. It intercepts it,
Yep.
right? So the 1500 actually will move the existing RAM, the 16K on board, actually higher up in the memory map.
Yeah.
And then it maps in the RAM pack where the normal 16K would be. So on the 1500s, you can actually get 32K. On the 1000s, they just use the old ULA. So none of that's there. So it would just disable the internal. You wouldn't get the 32K. You'd still have 16K, but it would be the RAM pack 16K.
Yeah.
For those of you that really like the wobble problem, you could actually emulate that.
Yeah, the only thing that this particular design corrected was the wobble, not the terrible keyboard.
Right.
So Carl, I'm going to show the 3 pictures that we have. I think we have 4, but I'm going to show these micro drive pictures, and then I'm going to let you talk about them. I'll start off with, this is Carl in my office, right behind me.
God, I look so fat there.
And he's holding the 2 drives in his little hands, and these are the 2 drives next to each other. And why don't you describe what you did to make this look that way?
Well, the big thing is, you obviously take it apart, take the guts out of it, unless you want to paint the guts, which probably I wouldn't recommend. But anyway,
yes, you would. Yes, you would.
The big thing on the case is, you noticed on the original, the Sinclair one, you have Sinclair up there embossed in the plastic, right? And ZX microdrive is also embossed. So you have to sand that off, right? You have to smooth that out. You have to get it out of there, right? Because the Timex ones don't have that. It's smooth up there, like the one I have, that I made. So, but just realize you have to sand that off.
Mm-hmm.
And then on this particular one, you see the rainbow colors on the metal faceplate there.
Yep.
I initially didn't cover that. I just painted over it, but you can kind of still see the lines. You don't see the colors, but you can still see that was there. So I think I messed up on the paint on that. So I actually sanded this down to metal. And I had to put I actually used the gray paint that I use for the bottom as a base coat to kind of smooth out all the sanding and all that stuff to give the silver more of a smooth look. But anyway, you can't see the lines on the silver one here. But it kind of brings up a big point that you're seeing it so close is if you look at the Timex picture, what would have been, I think their micro drives are empty. Because see how the black one, the original one has a red LED sticking out of it. I mean, it's pretty obvious. You look at the Timex picture and you look at those little micro drives that they have on top of the modem, they don't seem to have red LED sticking out of them to me. They're kind of like mine, I think they're just shells. There weren't really guts inside of them. And this is the ugly modem. Of course, the modem's on the bottom. That I got from you, David, and I painted this as well.
And you put a new sticker on it.
I put a 2050 sticker on it. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a.
Well, the sticker makes it faster too. Now it runs at 2400 baud.
Yeah. These are cool faster stickers.
Hey man, I think that sticker came out good. Anyway,
so did the 2065 sticker.
Yeah. And I sent those files out to everybody. So I mean, if you guys want to make your own labels like that, it's easy enough to get into a paint editing program, and you can just cut and paste the lettering for the numbers around. Mm-hmm. Anyway, you notice there's a label that I put on the modem. Red colon is modem data. So that's normally when you use the 2050 modem, that'll light up when you get a carrier or any kind of data. It lights up, right? But since we're converting these to RS-232 as well. That does
work, by the way. When we got online to the BBSs, that was one of the ways we realized right away that we were onto something.
Right. Yeah, the red light would come on. Yep.
Okay.
And then if you, I don't know if there's a picture of the back, but there'll be an RS-232 in the back, DB25, and okay, there you go.
Look at that.
And so that's kind of a prototype board. That's my perf board that's in there, how I kind of figure it's going to work. And if you notice on the far right there, you see the hole on the board. You can see where the board screws in together. There's the standoff there.
I can show the inside if you want, like this.
Yeah, show that, because that's really cool.
Okay.
I can show this one.
Well, that works too. So the upper left, there's a hole there. I made that so it lines up to the hole that's on the existing 2050 board, right? Oh. And underneath that on the case, I guess Timex maybe intended to screw down the cable, the interface cable that comes out. All the ones I've opened up, they don't ever use that. But there's some plastic support. Yeah, support that's underneath where it looks like you could screw in a screw to it. Right. So they probably had something that would hold the cable down, but they never used it. So anyway, it lines up with that. So I could potentially, screw a standoff into the board, and then I could screw this board to that. The other side, you can see the hole, but there's not a corresponding hole on the PCB, but there's nothing, no circuitry under there. So you could just drill a hole through the PCB, put another standoff there. That way, when you
standoffs, basically.
No, because where the INS 8251 is, that's going to be soldered down into the PCB.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That's right,
So that'll kind of be a mechanical support there, but I wanted more mechanical support around the DB25 connector, because obviously that's going to be getting some abuse, not abuse necessarily,
Strain.
but it needs to be securely fastened to the PCB somehow.
I want
And
to go
that
back
case,
to the back for a second.
Yeah.
So there's going to be I'm pointing to my screen, but you can't see what my hands are doing. So next to the 25-pin serial, there's going to be a switch to go from one mode to another. Is that what will happen?
Right. There'll be a toggle switch, a momentary toggle switch. So it's always going to be in the middle, right? But you can push it to the left or the right, and obviously it returns back to the middle. But that's how you switch modes. And the LED on the front will tell you. That's why, I made that little label to tell you that if it's green, that you're in RS-232 mode, and if it's off or red, it's not going to be any color if it's not, doing anything. But
right.
So just to kind of give the 2050 modem a little extra life, I suppose.
And I do want to talk about that back too, since this is the only picture we have of the back. So we're looking at the RJ11 socket here. On the left-hand side, you can see you can plug in something there, and that's where you plug in the phone. And normally the 2050 has another phone line coming out, and you can't unplug it from the back because it's just permanent. And so you have to use a connector to plug it. Either you plug it directly into your wall, or in my case, we had to use a coupler to plug it into another cable so that we could plug it into my voice over IP line.
Oh.
And that's how we had to do it.
Right. Yeah, on this particular board, on the ugly board, the captive phone cable is gone.
Yeah. Right.
And it did have the interface cable, but I desoldered that, and it's not on here.
So what else we got?
And then of course the back
we did.
Yeah, the back was missing, on that ugly case. It didn't have a back, right, David?
Right.
So I got some plexiglass coming in, black plexiglass, and I'll have to, cut out the stuff on it so that
Machine
it'll
it a little bit.
match up. Yeah.
Here's a clearer picture of the modem, but
Looks great.
Also, what's that?
I said that looks great. You did a good job, Carl.
Thank you.
Yeah. And finally we have these two. Well, it's not finally. We also have to see the QL. But we have these two connectors that go into the back of the 2068, and above, which interesting to me, is that looks sort of gray, but really it's yellowed quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know if Retro Bright will actually fix that, but I don't think it matters because Carl will paint it like he did the one on the bottom of it.
Yeah, it's hard to tell in this picture because I don't think flash was on, but the top, the top one is the original color, right? Yeah. And so I didn't really like that because the top and the bottom are the same color. So I made the top silver, as you see in the bottom. And if he goes to the next picture, that's the bottom of the interface cable case, and it's gray. So it matches the modem. And it looks better, I think, as that gray because it's much darker.
Yeah.
If you go to the next picture, Adam, I think, there you go.
Yeah.
Oh,
to me,
nice.
I don't know if anyone else is familiar with the NES too much, but that looks like the bottom of an NES. Like the NES game console. That's the bottom picture, the same color. Yeah, so if it was a little larger, I'd plug in my Mario Brothers in there and see if it would work. But
don't forget to blow on it first.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last pictures we have to look at are of the QL.
Oh, cool.
Oh no, that's not true. We have a better picture of. So this is. I was so excited. So this is our setup to get onto the internet, or excuse me, not the internet, a BBS. And I think I'll talk about what we did a tiny bit more here. So you can see in the middle there, between the 2068 and my laptop, you can see a 2050 modem. So you get that a good size. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah. Looks good.
And then we have my CRT, which is right after we first got on to a BBS successfully. And I'm like, oh my God, where's my camera? This might not last. But then everything worked perfectly after we finally figured out what to do. And in the background there, you can see a couple of other extras. But basically, this was us finally getting online, and then this is what we saw. This is me on the basement BBS, which is an Atari 8-bit BBS. And you can see there it says Cleveland League Atari
Atari's.
Super Systems.
Yeah.
And I would like to make a video of us online. But I forgot to borrow a working modem from Carl. There are 7 of them here, or 4 of them that were working. And do I have any now? No.
5. There was 5 working.
5? Okay.
Yeah, 2 of them didn't work. They worked, but
To some
we
extent,
were
yeah.
getting garbage. Yeah, when we
Yeah.
were receiving stuff.
So I also chose this as a good picture to share because it is one of the ones where you don't have to worry so much about the screen wrap, because the Atari has this major wide 40-column screen, 40 columns. And in most cases, it makes it too difficult to see what's going on. And we found that with all the BBSs, they have large screen wraps. But it worked, and it is what it is. And I did try to load it up in OS64 and it didn't work, which I wasn't surprised to see that. But if anyone knows of like other software that will work with this modem that supports either 68 column mode or something like that, let me know. And now we're finally on to the last thing we did that evening. In fact, by this time, Ryan had already left, and that was to look at this computer. If you've all, can you see it pretty good? This is
You mentioned no keyboard
no, there's a keyboard. What do you mean?
working.
Oh, no. Well, the computer itself doesn't work.
Well, that's what Lewis told me. Yeah, it's non-working.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to try and plug it in. I'll have to open it up first and see what's going on in there before I throw power onto it.
I have a few membranes left.
Oh yeah. Okay,
Yes.
well, that might be good.
And I'll show you the back because apparently there's 2 pictures I took of the back. Now,
That's the US.
yeah, but I don't. What Carl was telling me some differences. Maybe Carl, you can share with other people what makes this different.
Yeah, well, I'm not a QL expert. That's kind of why I wanted to get one of these. And I know I'm talking to, I think it's don't want to butcher his name because I did in the emails to him. Andy, I think it is, right? He says he has a working one, and so we've negotiated a deal with that. And but he's just a busy guy, and we just he hasn't got around to shipping it.
Okay.
But anyway, I don't know if that's an American one. I assume it is, but I was under the impression that the American ones are kind of rare, right? Because I don't know. I was watching a YouTube video or something a few months back, and they were talking about that because I don't think they sold that many here. As many as opposed to what they sold in the UK, right? And the UK ones have the British connectors for this. The British phone connectors instead of the DB9s here.
Oh,
for the serial.
For the serials. Also, they don't have
Right, the serial and the control.
Joystick.
I don't know what the controller. What is? I mean, obviously Tim would know what control 1, control
Joystick.
2.
Joysticks.
Oh, are they? Oh, okay, controller. Okay, joystick controller. Gotcha.
And channel 3 and 4 is going to be a US modulator.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
We worked
So I
on
think
a
there were
lot of them.
There are about 8,000 sold in the U.S.
Oh wow.
Okay.
9,000 manufactured from Samsung, but only 8,000 came to the U.S. and were sold.
Oh wow.
Oh, well, that's not as rare as I thought then. Well, maybe he was in Britain, and so it was like rare over there.
Yeah, yeah.
US version, yeah.
It was probably like
like
10 times that sold in Britain, right?
Pardon?
I don't know the numbers myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so, I imagine, go ahead.
If you get it running, it helps to have an elevated back of the end of that computer to get the airflow from front to back.
Okay. Well, I was looking at some stuff, and obviously I think I need to get an updated ROM for it, because the basic ROM that came with it was pretty crap, right? Everybody's the Minerva ROM or something like that, or even something newer, but
So basically the JSU ROM is pretty good. One thing you'll notice about this particular machine, the Samsung are quite rock solid. The Thorn EMI built for Britain were kind of flaky, but the Samsungs were built later and rock solid. Mine survived a car crash. So they're pretty good. The JSU ROM is not as good. You can get a Minerva. there was also an MGUS ROM, but I have no idea if anybody archived it at all. That was
I don't know.
Tom
Okay.
Bent, I think, did that.
I may have one.
Good, because no one's archived that I can find. Yeah, Dillman Jones doesn't have it on his site, so no one's archived that, and there are very few around. So we can get it to someone who can burn it, make
Read
an
it.
image of it.
Yeah.
Read it. So
And I don't have a reader anymore.
Well,
Paul,
I certainly do, but
yeah.
so if you have the chip, that would probably be cheaper to ship. I mean, I don't think you want to ship the whole QL with it in there.
No, I have a box of chips.
Oh, okay.
yeah, the MGUS came as a separate add-on, separate just as a chip. Hey Carl, do you have micro drive cartridges? I think I sent you some.
You sent me some, yeah, and then
Okay.
so I do have some, but I need to talk to some guy in the UK that he makes new felts.
Oh wow.
He doesn't really sell them, but you have to email him and I guess whatever, work a deal
Also,
out. But
Dave Park from Texas used to make them. Don't know if he still has any more. I don't know if he's on our list at all.
Doesn't ring a bell. Dave Park.
Yeah,
Dave Parks. He's actually British. Worked for Sandy, and it's been in the U.S. now for 15, 20 years, something like that. He's on the QL board. He actually came and visited. So a lot of my QL stuff went to him when he came from Texas to pick some things up. So.
Mhm. Well, the other thing too is I don't know what the difference is, but I do have a V drive, but it's not going to be. I'm kind of going to use it for the Spectrum, but he also makes the QL drive, the virtual QL micro drives too. The problem is apparently is you can't use them in the QL itself. They have to be external. I don't know what the circuitry or something inside the QL won't work.
There's also the QL-SD card. Don't know if it's still being made or not. But you can find it online. That one I think was an internal. It replaced the micro drive.
Okay.
I
would prefer that, but I think I read somewhere, I was hearing somewhere that you can't use the V drive on the internal ones.
Okay.
Well, maybe you can, because I know he has some little modification that you have to solder in on the ribbon cables that come off of the headboard, because that's the difference. Yeah, that's the difference with the QL and the Spectrum ones. Is the Spectrum ones have a baseboard, right, that bolts to the bottom of the microdrive case, right, and then it has the edge connectors on either side. With the ones in the QL, that board doesn't exist. The headboard, the ribbon cables bolt straightly, I think, directly to the QL's motherboard.
Yep.
There's no baseboard in existence in the QL. It goes straight to the QL's motherboard.
And
I don't know if
pins. The wires, they weren't pins.
Right. Yeah, they're like clear. The ribbons that they used back in those days. It was just a bare metal wires inside of a plastic sheathing.
Can you read in the QL the micro drive created in the Spectrum? Is compatible?
No.
Not compatible.
Yeah, they're different formats. I mean, the cartridges are the same, but yeah, they're a different data format or something.
Yep.
Oh.
Kind of like
Okay.
a read. Well, yeah. There's no way to read Spectrum because I think the data formats are totally separate. I think a QL can read an OPD or Merlin Tonto
That makes sense.
micro drive, but definitely not a Spectrum.
Yeah.
Physical media is the same. The data that goes on is entirely different.
And I think the micro drives themselves actually are the same too. The headboard, the ULA on there, all that's the same. But like I said, there's no baseboard to go out to separate connect. It goes right to the motherboard on the QL.
What was the path of the computer for Sinclair after? In the beginning is the 1000, then the 1500, then 2068, and the next was the QL in US or not?
No.
Or
Well,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
For Timex,
So,
no. It ended with the 2068.
Right, but when Timex left, the rights to the QL to sell in the US reverted back to Sinclair. So by the time Timex closed in '84, the QL was just coming out, and I think so I've actually been doing some. Next paper of mine is going to be the QL in North America. The next month or so, I'll have that done. I'm like 90% done with it. So I've been doing some research on this. At the West Coast Computer Fair, March or in May of '84, they demonstrated a British QL. But it really didn't hit the market here until '85. $5.99 was the price, and then it dropped down to $2.99 by '86.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah, that was a
very
good deal.
very competitive. Oh,
And 99 and 87.
Yeah, when Sinclair got sold, so Sinclair got sold to Amstrad, A Plus Computer Response, bought the entire Sinclair warehouse and QLs and everything else they had in Sinclair there in Nashua. And they also bought the rights to the QL in North America, including QDOS, which then went to Tom Bent, then went to yes.
Oh,
and where is the manufacturer location of the QL? Was
Thorn EMI did it in the UK, but everything for the US was in Samsung in Korea. I don't know where the German or the Greeks and others were made. There might have been Samsungs, but I don't know. And the story says that when Samsung wasn't paid for the QLs, they didn't ship the last 1,000. And then Frank Davis, about 1991, 92, contacted Samsung and then wanted way too much for them. So they apparently are still sitting somewhere in Korea.
That's crazy.
and the Timex 2068 was made in Timex factory or was made in another factory?
Samsung. Made in Korea, probably by Samsung, but all we know is made in Korea.
Right.
The Timex 2068 too?
Yep.
No.
Yes.
Yeah, it says on,
says on the back, made in Korea.
yep, made in Korea. Even the
Wow.
PCBs are made in Korea. It says on the PCBs.
I'm going to guess Samsung because that's who Sinclair had manufacturing the QL, but I don't know. I couldn't find anything at all on who manufactured the 2068 in Korea. Nothing documented that I could find.
On those years, Samsung made electronics for worldwide source or different brands, right? Does not get their own brand or not. Like
I think that like
Panasonic
Timex, I think like Timex, they were a contract manufacturer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, Stuart's on. Wow, I was going to say, hey, thanks Stuart for the keyboard for my my once in a my rare 1500 Timex 1000 conversion. There he is. There's Stuart. So thanks Stuart for those parts you sent us way back when. One of those Timex 1000 keyboards that you sent me has ended up on my little prototype thing. I guess we don't have a picture of it. You weren't there. You weren't here when we were.
Useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know you were going to look at more of your keyboards to see how many of the 1000 ones you had, the US ones, because you said, you had probably not that many of those, right, that were in your stash.
Well, the actual, are you just talking about the flexible keyboard membrane?
Yeah, the membrane itself. But you remember the US ones had delete and enter.
Yeah, no, I have ZX81. I probably have 50 or 80 of the ZX81s.
Right.
I don't know that I have any US ones. I mean, does it matter that much? It depends, I guess. It depends.
Well, it matters to me, yeah. But I know you were going to look and see how many more you had at some point. But
yeah. As a matter of fact, João in Portugal was looking for US ones, and I said, sorry, all I have is the ZX81.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Which is a shame because all the reproduction ones, they use the UK stuff on it.
Which makes all kinds of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but it'd be nice if whoever has the plans for that makes it, if they could make a batch of the US ones. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But again, thanks, Stuart, for that.
Okay. Well, what other parts do you need? Do you have other partially working ZX81s? I mean, most people's problem is the ULAs, right?
Probably, yeah. I think everything else you can get, right? But yeah, the ULAs, although like I said, there are replacement ULAs that people make. So you can, just because your ULA is bad doesn't mean it's never to be revived again. You can.
Yeah. I haven't been doing anything particularly with the computers. I mean, I take orders and I ship stuff on eBay, but really in terms of playing with them, haven't done much lately. I hope this summer maybe to start again getting involved. I do have a question on I have this situation where when I bought the kits, back in the 80s, they came in these big cartons of about 33 kits per carton. And I opened one carton. Towards the very end, I opened a carton. I was looking forward to 33 kits. They were assembled. Okay. Only recently have I decided to do something with them. So I checked them out. They are channel 2-3. They're new and, the same retail box. They have Spanish language basic manuals, because I guess the original destination was some Spanish speaking country. But I guess it wouldn't be Spain because it's an odd mix. They are channel 2-3. So I guess there's a there's a geography trivia question for somebody. What countries speak Spanish and use channel 2-3?
All of the South American countries. It's only Brazil uses PAL. Everyone else is still NTS.
Okay, so I guess they were destined for South America. So only recently did they decide to try to sell them on eBay, put them to some use. And I pulled out like 5 of them last week. And one of them had like fantastic video to collect the clearest DX81 I've ever pulled out on this old, like probably 15-year-old Curtis TV that I bought off eBay just for this purpose, to try to be tolerant of the signals coming out of ZX81s. And then one was okay, and I sold that on eBay actually for $200 the day after I listed it. Well, I threw in some books and tapes, but basically I sold it as a collector's item more than usability. I said, if you're just gonna upgrade the RAM and the video, you might as well, you can get a ZX81 cheaper than the $200 I sold it for with some books and stuff thrown in. I said, it's more like it's for the condition. It's brand new, the raised red ZX81 on the stamp is perfect and there's not a scratch on it, etc. But I'd love to be able to sell more from that box. But the others had really, even though they're all working, I could press keys and see something on my Curtis TV, but the screens were really dark, super dark. And I'm trying to find is there any known solution where if somebody bought this thing, they'd be happy with it? I don't want to open them, so is there any solution for video?
I usually I know, Stuart, when they're really dark like that, that's kind of an indication that you're probably got the ULA in there that doesn't have a back porch. It's not putting the back porch out. Because those are generally kind of have that problem with some TVs. Some TVs, I guess, they must have worked on because they sold a crap ton of them with the 184 ULAs in it. So I guess you could look and see what ULA you have in there on those machines. If it's like a 150 something or the 184, then it doesn't have a back porch, and that's probably why that Curtis TV isn't really happy with it.
Yeah. Does anybody have any insight into? I know people who are building modern day tuners get modern day integrated circuits, and there are ones that they have the RF tuner and on a little tiny chip that isn't that expensive. To program the chip, it takes like I2C signals as to pull a channel and all that kind of stuff, and PAL or NTSC or all that. But my dream would be able to find an RF engineer who's played with that chip, who could give me a 1-channel TV, RF in, either channel 2 or 3, maybe jumper selectable. I want to minimize the cost, no tuners or no LED display necessary whatsoever. It's just got a jack in with channel 2 or 3, and it's got composite video out or HDMI, whichever's cheaper these days. You never know, but I was thinking of going on, I forget what the platforms are where you try to hire an engineer for iWork or something like that, or and see if by some magic there's like an RF engineer who's worked with that chip and could give me channel 2-3 RF in and video out, no controls whatsoever, run off a 5-volt.
The problem is the video AGC, the automatic gain control is you don't have the correct signal. Maybe you see more darker the screen because the medium level of the voltage is not get the amplifier necessary to see a good quality of video.
Right. Hey guys, we have about 5 minutes left, and I know
Okay,
David has
I'm
some
done.
last minute.
I just threw out my
Thank you,
wish
sir. I
for
appreciate that.
Christmas.
I know that David has some last minute things he wants to talk about.
Well, okay. So Greg wants to know if anybody's going to VCF SoCal in 2 weeks. So reply to Greg in the chat. I just want to mention that Tim somehow found some French Canadian Timex and QL newsletters. It was a guy, Renee, who lives up in Montreal, published some newsletters. And I'll just go to that page. He called it Sinclair Information. I can't remember what nouvelle means. News, maybe. I'll try to put this up on. I'm just waiting for my screen to load here. Anyway, so Tim found this, and I reached out to Renee and archived them on, put them up on archive.org. And I'm working my way through. Let's share the screen. I'm working my way through indexing these things, but they're all in French. So there might be a headline in English, but the entire article is in French. Fortunately, Google Translate, you can just sort of type stuff in. And also French is not terrible to, transliterate from. Adam, I thought you might enjoy this. These mastheads look like they were done in View 3D. I asked Renee, he said he couldn't remember. But he typed these up he used TazWord 2. He used this Smith.
Oh, this.
Go ahead. Oh, Adam, you just your microphone switched off.
Oh, sorry. The person you keep naming is the editor?
Yeah, his name is Renee. I don't want to butcher it. Gagnon.
Okay.
And I say they're in French. They're in French. They're in Quebecois French, which is not real French, as from what I understand. So you'll see lots of things like this. Les bugs du 2068, and but he also, one of the things that he wrote, sort of going back to our discussion earlier, was he wrote a machine language toolkit for accessing the higher resolution modes that are built into the 2068, which are kind of really difficult to get at. And he wrote these little routines that you can use from BASIC.
They're published in the newsletter?
Yep.
Oh.
And actually, so this article, it's called, the thing was called Toolkit Ultra Res in French, because the way you construct French. His version's in French in his newsletter, but it also got published in English in Some, which was the newsletter out of Florida, Gainesville, Florida, and that's in English.
And
so
we have the source code of that.
Yeah, he's the source code is in his French one. So we go here and you'll see it. Just 18-ish. Yep, 18 issues. And there's the source code right there.
I think that it could be possible to add these routines to the TS Pico.
There you go.
in a specific slot.
Yeah, exactly.
If we
Right.
you have a free slot, we can add this as a BIOS calling and also use those routines on the TS Pico platform.
Yep. Yep.
Well,
So
at
does
least
TS Pico speak French?
Yes, it speaks every
It
language.
speaks Spanish.
well, I was just going to say, at least the mnemonics aren't in French. How would that work?
So there's that. And I'm working my way through it. It's a lot of fun because I get to transliterate French, which I took in high school and never again.
So kind of a question on that, David. Well, a question on that. So can we use 64 column mode in BASIC? Is that kind of what those routines allow?
It lets you use the I think it's the attribute mode where it's 8 pixels wide and 1 pixel high. So that's like a 512 by 192 mode, I think. It's not 64 columns of text, it's for graphics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, the reason to put on the ROM in a slot empty on the TS Pico is because you have all the memory RAM free.
Exactly.
You not need any special location to put the routines. We put on the ROM side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have a switching capability as a proprietary bank switching that works as David used maybe in his module. This is a very good option to add on the TS Pico platform for this year maybe.
All right, so I'll put in a little ticket for us to do that.
Yeah.
And our next meeting is February 18th, Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Work out what that means for you in your local time. Those are my announcements.
That's my birthday.
Is it really? Oh, well. You know what? Is Ryan still here?
We're gonna have virtual cake.
Yeah.
Well, but maybe Ryan has a birthday program.
Oh, there you go.
When changed the time in US and what date? In March?
What's
something like that.
Oh, it changes the time? Yeah, I don't know. When is
Yeah.
daylight savings? Yeah, I think it's in March.
21 maybe, or
and then we'll be very terribly confused about time. Gustavo brings up a really interesting point in March 10th. Okay, so what's the time difference right now, Gustavo? Is it 2 hours?
Now it's 2 hours. Yes,
it's
correct.
2 hours.
Then
yeah.
the next shift is 1 hour. Yeah, but I don't know who is the.
I think I move closer to you. I think we move closer to the Argentine. You guys stay fixed in time, and we
jump ahead.
Spring forward. Thank you. Yes.
I think we all stay fixed in time. We just move the clock hands.
That's right.
Except for Arizona. They don't have daylight savings.
That's true.
That's right.
David, before we close out, are we going to have the guy who wrote Diamond Mike on next time? Is that the idea?
I am working, John. John, it's a slow burn. I'm working him. Okay. I've been working him for a year and change. What Adam's bringing up is a guy named John Coffey had a program. He had a company back in the 80s and wrote a compiler for the 2068 called Compass, and he also wrote this game called Diamond Mike, which would you say was Boulder Dash or something like that?
Yeah, it's a clone of Boulder Dash. A really good clone, actually.
Somehow I managed to track John down at one point, and I emailed him, and I kind of get the sense that John's a little grumpy. And so, he was like less than enthusiastic to talk to me about this kind of stuff. But once we got started talking, he's like, we talked a little bit about emulators, and I said, well, and he asked me, had I ever seen a cassette for Diamond Mike? And I said, not yet. And then I don't know, a few months later, somebody sent me something that had a cassette for Diamond Mike in it, and I archived it and I sent it off to John. And so now he has, one of these cassettes that he produced back in 85 or something. And then, Adam played it and recorded a video, and you know, I think I'd forgotten that you recorded that video, Adam. And
That,
so
like
when
last
you
March or something. I
when
did?
you sent you know, a new message through the group, I was like, oh, and I pop over to Facebook and shared that with John, and John then went and commented like what 3-4 paragraphs on your
Yeah,
video.
like just a 5 minutes later, it seemed like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're trying to get him to join us.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
And I'd like to throw out somebody else maybe to get, I don't know if he's still alive or not, but I've been doing a lot of stuff, you know, or me and Ryan kind of looking at the 2060 things because, and getting micro drives maybe to work because he created, well, you know, he did the article on the missing 253, right, for the
Oh
bank
yeah,
switching.
Wes.
Yes, that, plus he did this interface 0, right? He made
Yeah.
a circuit for the interface 0 so it could interface the Timex 2068 with the interface 1,
Yep.
right? And, but I think, you know, he's got to be a hardware god, you know, with all the stuff that he's written for that I think it was with Syncus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know if he's still around or, you know, maybe he doesn't give a crap about any of this shit anymore and doesn't want to talk about it. But
No,
I mean,
no.
maybe he does.
We had Wes on a few years back, and we talked about the, you know, the series of articles. But to your point, Carl, you know, we've gotten a bunch more information since then,
Right.
and it would be really cool to find out, you know, to get Wes's opinion on that stuff, because he spent so much effort sort of reverse engineering how the BEU was supposed to work, right? Yeah,
Well,
we got them.
just the other articles of the hardware things that he was doing. I mean, he's not just the BEU and the bank. I mean, he knew that machine inside and out, man.
He really did. Yep, he did a lot of really cool stuff. Did a lot of really cool stuff. Yeah, Wes Brzezowski.
Yes, right.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, if we could get him maybe to, you know, revisit us sometime soon, I think that would be great.
Cool. All right, I'll reach out to Wes and we'll see if we can get him in. All right.
Thank you, David.
Well, gentlemen, I think we've covered a lot. They went by pretty fast for me. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. 18th.
Bye, guys.
Just under 2 weeks.
Good night, all.
Okay.